Welcome, everyone, for the third of its kind DaVinci dialogue that I've been now hosting. It's the third week. And today's topic is, does consciousness exist? My name is Dr. B. I'm currently in Germany. And yeah, I've been kind of in this topic for the last, it seems like forever, but let's say seriously 12 years through my own inquiry about the nature of reality, traveling to India and Nepal and various places around the world, being immersed in many different spiritual techniques and meditations, as much as obviously studying the art and science of sacred geometry, coming from my own academic background as a biotechnologist, molecular biologist.
My name's Peter Strange. I'm in London. So I've worked in health and wellness for over 30 years. I've developed my own healing modality, the reset method. I'm very much interested in consciousness and working with consciousness, my own and others on a daily basis. Does it exist? I'd say absolutely yes. What is it is obviously a much bigger question. Yeah, I mean, I've read many definitions of consciousness. None of them seem to quite fit to me. I think probably one of the most profound commentaries. It's not really, when the question was asked, it wasn't really about consciousness. It was Saint Francis of Assisi. He was asked, "How do I find God?" And his answer was, "What you are looking for is what's looking." And I think, in a way, that is a description of consciousness. That it's not. I've heard it described as a substance, a psychic substance. I've heard it described as a flow of energy and information. I've heard it described as a field, but I think like they're all true, but it's kind of even more all-encompassing than that, I would say. Yeah, and what you're looking for is what's looking. It's not only visual, it's multi-sensorial. It's kind of the word conscious itself. It means to know, to know together, or to know all.
Hi, yes, my name's David. Yeah, consciousness. It does keep me up at night thinking about that from time to time. Um, yeah, I would agree with everything that Peter just said there. It's multidimensional in many ways. You can come at it from different angles. It's self-referencing. It's fractal. It's holographic. It's a field. Um, it's one thing it's not, I'm pretty certain it's not an emergent property of biological physical matter. It is separate from that, I would suggest. And it goes to the very heart of what reality is. So that's pretty much as far as I've got, really. I mean, it ties in nicely with my belief that we are in some sort of simulation, um, quite neatly. But ultimately, I think looking at it from a spiritual sort of point of view, I see us that we come from the whole. We're a fractal, a holographic part of the whole, expressed in this physical form, and that that's it's hard to prove it, but that's essentially my feeling on the subject.
I've been going on a bit of a deep dive the last couple of months to sort of understand myself more and to understand the realms of the world and to do a deeper dive of who we are as an individual and the consciousness of in myself and consciousness within others and how the energy of all of us, we're all connected, and there's the phrase of we are connected as one. But we are all having the awareness and the experiences and thoughts of what's going on around us are all different because of our own experiences and filters of ourselves. So yeah, it's again an interesting one just to understand, being more aware of things that are going on in the bigger realm, or even looking into like quantum physics, quantum mechanics, to, not worrying so much about the how, because we are human beings, not human doings. And sadly, in the world that we've been in for however long, we get, all you need to do to get whatever we need to get. But a lot of what I believe is already out there is within us.
So yes, I'm Beatrice. I'm calling from Sweden. Thank you for inviting me, Dr. Heike. And I feel like I'm starting my journey to understanding much better about all of these topics. And yes, definitely, I believe that consciousness exists, that there's a collective consciousness, and I'm on that path to continue finding out more and finding myself and being part of the collective consciousness that we are.
I am
A wizard.
in Portugal, and I'm definitely on a journey of discovering consciousness. I loved everybody's interpretation of it, and I feel for myself, it's how do I surrender more into whatever this field is, to allow what's this kind of guiding force to move through me, and to be of service. I think that there's something greater than the individual parts, and the more I let go into it, and the more I allow the consciousness to flow through me, the more I can be of better service. So there's something that I believe in it that is a guiding force, which is exceptional when in the few brief moments of lucidity that I can tap into it. And it's such a beautiful part of human existence, is to experience what this consciousness might mean at any given moment. But I'm really happy to be here with you all.
Yeah, so what you are looking for is what is looking. It's kind of self-referencing, isn't it? Yeah. It's a flow, you said, a field, a substance, holographic, multidimensional. It's not an emergent property from matter. So this is very interesting, because we want to go into that, because that's actually, there are actually two views in this world currently. There's the view of science, and then there's the view of philosophy, or spirituality, you could say. And they're very different. They're actually not in alignment. So, I'll go into that in 1 second. But yeah, then come from the whole expressed in physical form. Who is myself, and who are others? And they're all connected as one. Everybody's different, and yet it's all a collective consciousness, and knowing that to become of service. Some of the answers in quantum physics, simulation theory. Okay, now this idea that, what is consciousness, or does consciousness exist, has two answers. So from a scientific view, basically, and this is kind of what I learned, or maybe not learned at all, because really when we're thinking about science, it's all just the world of matter. That's really all we can do in science. We can only study the things that we can actually measure. So that's where the problem of consciousness also comes in, and it's called the hard problem of consciousness, because we can map, let's say, how we think, right? So we can see, if we're thinking about the color red or whatever, then certain neurons fire in our brain, or if you feel happy, certain areas fire, certain tastes. So there's a pattern in the brain that is associated with certain feelings and information that comes into reality. But it does not explain how do we actually experience that. Like last time when we talked about, what did we talk about last time? Truth exists. What is reality, right? yeah, that, let's say, light in itself, what we see is electromagnetic waves. It's frequencies, and we can measure that. Yet those frequencies get translated in through our body, through certain processes, into an signal, an electronic signal, and fires in the brain, and then creates an image. But this image, like how we create this image, the color of something, that's happening within our consciousness. And that cannot be explained by current science. It cannot explain why. I mean, our consciousness, let's say, if it's the brain, it's sitting completely in the dark, right? Because it's in the skull of our body. So we don't actually, let's say, if from a scientific term that consciousness is a product of matter of the brain, it would sit in the dark, but somehow we don't know actually how it translates a physical signal, an electric signal, into an image that we see, right now, and we taste and we hear, and all of these five senses to create this magical experience we call life. So that's where the problem lies at the moment in science. And then obviously we have the other view, and really everybody here today is more sharing that view, that consciousness kind of precedes matter. And that is a very, very old thought, I mean, it goes back all the way to the oldest scriptures and the oldest teachings in the world, like based on Hinduism, the Vedic knowledge, who was saying that the Atman is Brahman. The individual consciousness is actually part of the ultimate consciousness. So that is in alignment with what you said, David, about, yeah, it's all part of a whole. It's all part of a hologram. It's a kind of a splitter of all that exists. So that's really interesting. Now, my question is to you. Yeah. Oh, there's somebody else. Bradley.
Yes, I just feel like I was meant to be here. I got invited by someone yesterday, and anyway, I didn't really prepare to be to be here. But I'm from South Africa, and the Sanusis. I don't know if you know what a Sanusi is.
No, tell me.
You have Sangoma. Okay, it's basically the Africans' version of like you can't really directly translate it, but say like a pope or a bishop would be a Sanusi. So they're deeply spiritual people, deeply connected to nature. And they have a saying is, all is as it's meant to be.
Is there any situation in the past where you felt like the first thought, oh, I'm not your body, or something like that? Anything that you remember, you've experienced that made you come to this conclusion that consciousness is beyond matter itself? There's two incidences that happened. I was actually quite young, well, maybe 12, 13. And I had a moment where I was looking at the mirror, and all of a sudden, I just had this very strange feeling that the person I'm looking at, the body I'm looking at, is not truly who I am. It was kind of this feeling like, wow, that's interesting. And I was looking at my hand, and I was like, oh, I have these hands. And they're moving, and really like questioning, the way I look, and looking at myself and looking at my eyes. And I was looking inside of my eyes and was thinking, this is so strange to have this avatar. And then maybe around the same time, it was just a very random thing. I was just walking outside of the door of this house, actually, going to school. And I just had this kind of epiphany in one moment. Oh my God, I know everything. I know all the secrets of the universe. And at the same time, the next thought was, oh my God, you're going to forget it. You're going to forget it. In the next moment, you're going to forget it. And then I forgot it. And then I was just thinking, what was that? And I went on with my day. But yeah, these two experiences were very profound for me, because I still remember them, and it kind of, very much shifted something inside of me that maybe was more subconscious than conscious. But yeah, it definitely is probably one of the reasons why I'm on this path.
I've got an experience that just sort of came to mind when you were mentioning yours, but it wasn't necessarily about me. It was something that someone told me. I was away in Ireland a few years ago, and this particular lady is she does the remote viewings where you can, take some cloth of, say, she basically helps find trafficked children, which I think is quite epic thing to try and do to sort of find these children that have been taken. Anyway, I was at an event and we were sharing a twin room together. And the next morning she said to me, "Did you sleep okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, why?" And she went, "You were very normally I sleep and don't move. Generally, I'm sort of like all cuddled up and I just, whereas she said you were sort of all over the place." And I'm like, "Oh," and she said, "And there was someone at the end of your bed, like just a black figure." And that sort of freaked me out a little bit. And I'm like, so my interpretation and experience and meaning on then what she's just told me is there's an entity out there. And whatever it was doing at the end of my bed, to me, I've got no idea. But then understanding the sort of when I've gone down these sort of rabbit holes or searches of answers where you've sort of I have for probably a year now been having quite a lot of vivid dreams. So even one this morning, and I wrote it down to then understand that we as you said, your avatar in the mirror, what do our dreams actually mean, as in our subconscious? What is our subconscious trying to tell us? And is there any connection to anything out there, as that we say this the consciousness is one and we're all connected? What does that actually dream mean? What did that person at the end of my bed, what were they doing? So that sort of got me, thinking of what's going on in the world that we live.
I've had quite a few interesting experiences. Firstly, to say that this idea of the observer, I feel I've always had that, the ability to, be the observer of myself. I've throughout my life really kind of almost viewed myself from above, living my life and the journey of my life. And, even though I'm present, I'm kind of aware of, to an extent, what's brought me to this present moment and, what's to come. So I've always kind of had that, but never fully been able to grasp it. And then through plant medicines, I've got a few plant medicine experiences. I've definitely experienced what felt like unity consciousness. So like the first experience I ever had with DMT, I would say, I mean, I saw a very religious image, and I don't regard myself as being religious, but it looked like, I guess, how the Virgin Mary and the baby Jesus is depicted, the mother and baby. It very much looked like that kind of classic depiction of that, which is really strange to me. I wasn't expecting to see that at all. But what I felt in that experience was that I was the mother, I was the baby, I was both of them, I was neither of them. I was, it was like a feeling of unconditional love, that the love between a mother and a child, like, and it was just all consuming. So that was interesting. And then through my work, I guess, I've kind of developed an ability to become a surrogate for my patients. Like when I work remotely, I work through my own body and mind, and I kind of I'm able to an extent feel what it is to be in their body and mind through my own body. So that's something I do through my healing work. But then probably the most profound, in a way, one of the most simplistic yet most profound experiences of realizing that consciousness is not really only residing within the body is because I think it is within us, but it's it's everywhere, right? But it was probably as a teenager seeing when my grandmother died. We were asked if we wanted to view her in the coffin. It was kind of optional, where before the funeral, and my two sisters didn't want to do it. Most of my family, but I had this kind of curiosity. I'd never seen a dead body. It's kind of a morbid thing to talk about, but it was actually one of the most kind of it was a really positive experience for me, because I looked at her, this person who I'd loved, and it was absolutely it was clearly still the same vessel, but it was absolutely obvious to me that who she was, who I had known, was no longer present within that vessel. It was like so glaringly, I can't explain it. It was such a huge realization. Oh my God, she's not there. Like I can see the body, but she's not there. And you know, I've obviously I've been to other funerals since, and I've seen it, and but that first experience was just so profound for me. Like, and it was really kind of reassuring, actually, really reassuring. Like she's no longer suffering. She's not in that body. She's somewhere else. And I had that strong, distinct feeling that, yeah, she still exists, but you know, as her essence, her soul, whatever, but she's not there. So that's probably my most profound experience.
Could I just follow on quickly from that? Because it really resonated with me as I actually lost my husband 12 years ago and I didn't go to see him. It was very much maybe a bit of a denial that if I saw him, it made it true. And I don't think today that in a way that I wish I had. I don't know, but it's just really interesting with regards to what you said, as in like we are all vessels and we're taking in things from the outer energies, consciousness and so on. But yeah, thank you for sharing. And again, it just reflected with regards to, in a way, trying to understand my reason to why I didn't want to go. And if
Yeah.
I had have gone, how not what comes to mind is how that would have affected me, but I don't want to use those words. But yeah, interesting one. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I think the profound thing for me was like, because I don't think I've ever been to a funeral where I haven't cried. I always cry. I'm quite an emotional person, but it was just like I was kind of somewhat fearful of that experience, but actually it was really positive. That was the thing that really kind of shocked me is like, and I'm not suggesting that that would have been the right thing for you, Karen, but I just think like, yeah, it was just really positive. It was a really reassuring thing for me. Like it really, yeah, I can't explain. There was nothing negative about that experience, which was a surprise. I wasn't expecting to feel that way. So.
Amazing. That's, by the way, the exact same experience as well, Peter, with the funeral. First time I saw a dead body, same.
What I spoke about earlier about African spirituality is really a slither of that has come into the world through Bert Hellinger. Very rarely acknowledged, though, which is constellation energy, usually through family constellations. I don't know if anyone has done one.
I've done my own birth chart recently, and it's very interesting reading. And again, even understanding where you see a lot of astrology out there and understanding the planets are aligned and Jupiter's now in Leo and all of this wonderful stuff's going to happen. And it's all about surrendering and believing what's been said will happen.
Yeah. So current constellation energy that I'm speaking about there has got a lot to do with constellations because there is this unseen force. But what I'm specifically speaking about is a body of sort of an impulse around thing called family constellations that Bert Hellinger brought. So it's called constellations, which make it a bit confusing. It's actually to do with African spirituality when they speak to their ancestors, that religion. So no one here has done that on the call, which is perhaps what I was saying earlier, why I'm meant to be here, because there's an enormous amount. It's not even a question when you do this work. I've done it with over thousands of people. I'm writing a book on it at the moment. I've connected it with the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, other kingdoms, including the planets. So it's not even a question. Anyone that has any doubt, I can just go into a family constellation, Google family constellation, go into a family constellation. It depends how expansive you are. What I'm drawn to do is share one example in my journey with this. So I'm really a bridge between, like I was saying, Sanusi. I wouldn't have the arrogance to say I'm a bridge with Sanusi and the Western world, but let's just say Sangomas. In one of my moments, I've been on a pilgrimage, and one of the things was, like I say, using this energy and connecting it to the mineral kingdom. And this one lady, her husband passed away, and in the flow of life, it was at that same time that I got a meteorite, bought a meteorite. So in the constellation, when we set up the energy, she could choose anything she wanted to, and she chose the meteorite as a stone. She gave it to a representative, someone to represent her husband that passed away, and it was like a meteorite hit the earth in the facilitation of this. She screamed for about 5 minutes, and just held space in love and not fear. And then suddenly this representative sort of jolted and animated, and in a second she said, "It's you." She knew exactly that it was him representing. He being represented in the constellation. And they had an amazing conversation, crying, about how she was stuck, and she had such guilt with moving on to another relationship, and she didn't know how to move on. And he was just saying the most beautiful things about he's a soul spirit and he loves her unconditionally, and she can move on.
To kind of follow up on that, because I have had an experience of family constellations, only limited experience, but it's really profound. And like, I think I understand where Bradley's coming from, but there's kind of a piece to it that I kind of alluded to it already, actually. You can enter a family constellation as someone totally well, seemingly, knowingly, completely unconnected to the subject. So, like the lady who lost her husband, you can come in as the representative of her husband, never having met her husband, or never having met her or any of the other people present, and you can, in that experience, feel what it was to be her husband and all the attached emotions and how you feel about her. And it's really, really profound. The one I took part in, I can't remember the story behind it, but like they brought me in as a representative of someone who had died, and I just had to lie on the floor motionless. And this person was unknown. They didn't know who this person was and how they related to the family. It was just a kind of sense that there was this person that had passed. And I mean, just that when the different people approached me, and kind of the relationship is all about the relationship with space. I think, like I know you referenced a particular tribe there. I believe the Native Americans had a very similar process. I think a lot of a lot of tribes had these similar processes, but yeah, it was like I can't explain it, but I really felt the emotions as though I was whoever that person was, and it became apparent who that person was as well. That's the crazy thing. So yeah, I completely. I don't know if we're talking about the same thing, but I think we are.
Yeah, we definitely. It's just, you said family constellations. So this in the West, the understanding of this is very limited. Most people, like I said, constellations get confused with constellations in the planets, but they still are related because they're part of life. So it's quite expansive, and you can lose so it depends where they, you can lose people in this work. But it sounds like you experienced a family constellation, so that would have been it. So the family is like in the water element in the five elements. So you'd have water, wood, fire, earth, metal. So you have the five element theory as well. So the journey that I've been on is really sort of like a pilgrimage around this work, in terms of being, like I said, very expansive. But family constellations is definitely related, Peter. So what you would have experienced is there's that oneness, and you could tap into the emotion, to those emotions of that person. So it would be, and profoundly, like it's profound. It's like really, it's real. It's not the unseen and the seen become one. So yeah, it's amazing work. I did do it very rarely now. I used to do it quite intensive for like 5 years. But it's not even a question. Like I say, for me, it's not even a question. It's not even a question. This work. The thing is, constellations is a bit confusing because of the word, but in one way, not confusing. So a constellation is points of light connecting. So essentially, our souls are all points of light connecting. It's all like light, but it's all connected in such a way, like how you perceive that and how you frame that, and things like that. But that's just, if you want, what's helpful is to think it's points of light connecting. So those are the relationships in the room. So where you would have been lying, where the other person would have been, there would have been relationships there. And it's just, like I said, there's just a lot of information. So, but you tune into, with that experience, what's relevant, you know? Yeah, but points of light connecting. The African people call it Pakhla. Pakhla is the actual word. It's, for me, a frustration that we call it actually constellations in one way. So Pakhla is when you speak to your ancestors. That's where this was learned from. It's that energy work, and that's been, like I said, it's a slither of it we have in the West. We have so much to learn from Africa.
From many, many cultures. So many beautiful teachings. Yeah. And but thank you for representing that part. And yeah.
We have so much to learn.
Yes, so much to learn. Okay. But let's bring it back to consciousness, okay? Consciousness. And I like what you said, Karen, because you said also consciousness, then there's subconsciousness, and actually there's unconsciousness, and then there's superconsciousness. So even our own consciousness is actually fragmented. So what is conscious, let's say our moment of choice, even that is often based on subconscious patterns, right? And I guess family constellations and that kind of stuff comes in here. But also just to understand that really all of these parts are consciousness and somehow fragmented into these layers. And so really our, I guess, our pathway is stepping more and more into that consciousness, and from that consciousness into the super consciousness, which actually, if I go back to the Vedic knowledge, where I was just saying, the Atman is the Brahman. So Atman is the individual consciousness, the highest form of the individual. And the Brahman is then the super consciousness, the ultimate consciousness, the one, you could say. And that's actually how Plotinus, Greek mystic, was also dividing the one, the undivided, beyond the thought, into the divine mind, and then into the individual soul, and then into the matter. So to consciousness, there's a structure. And what's interesting as well is that some people say, but pretty much that all is actually consciousness, even matter is consciousness, is part of the whole. Yeah.
100%. Again, this is what I was saying, is in terms of this experience around connecting constellation energy. Constellation energy for me sounds more like when you in your language, because if you go back, with the Sumerians, when they made the tablets, a lot of people go back to what's writing, right? And they had these clay things, and they'd make little things. And that generation was like, oh my goodness, what can we pass on to the next generation in terms of like knowledge? There's what I was saying earlier, the Sanusis, it's a 40-year tradition. And it's an oral tradition. So you share something, and they share it back to you. So they check in that you understand it correctly, not just written and stuff. So that's why it's oral. It's 40 years. But when the Sumerian, these tablets were made, they said, what knowledge can we pass on? And they said it was like Maya. They spoke about Maya, I think was one of the first things that they wrote about. So Maya, it meant three things. It meant it was an illusion. So everything we see is an illusion.
Yeah, we talked about this last week, actually.
Yeah. So that was Maya. That's the third of Maya. A third of Maya is its illusion. The second thing of Maya is it's infinite. So the illusion is infinite. So the illusion is you can go to the smallest point in a microscope in science, and you keep on looking in science microscope. You can spend your whole life looking to the stars. You're wasting your time because it's just it's an infinite illusion. And the third thing it meant is love. How you approach this illusion is through love.
About consciousness, I've been in a 2-hour internal like emotional breathing session with a friend. And what I have in mind right now about consciousness is that how we experience this reality has a lot to do with emotions. Going between infinity and zero, like being nothing and being everything. And in my individual experience today, it felt like how you said about the illusion being infinite, Maya being infinite, Bradley. I really resonated with that part. I actually wanted to inquire a bit more what you meant by wasting time. I felt like I have been wasting my whole life in that journey. And today, when I was called in to tap into my emotions, I was like, let me shift my search from what's like kind of what is conscious, what isn't conscious, what kind of consciousness layers I can achieve that will help me, you know, achieve something, into what is actually real for me internally, and how can I kind of relate that to the outer world, maybe, or like how can I give something to the outer world.
Okay, just to kind of bring it back to the topic, and actually I want to also make a little bit the link now to geometry, because really everything that I do in my world is actually all related to this, you know, word sacred geometry, which is how the universe, or actually how consciousness structures itself. And so if we're going back to everything that you guys said, there's many words to describe it. But ultimately, and that's what Pythagoras said, was if you're looking at the soul and an understanding of what soul means, it's really mathematical in its foundation. You know, just the fact that you can say I is already a number compared to the all, the infinite. That's also a number. And so to properly hone it down, you know, to, let's say, put a framework into this infinite, which actually is also, you know, even, let's say, a circle, for example, has the infinite encoded within itself. There's ways to comprehend that, which is the consciousness, the individual, and the collective, the ultimate. And so the ancient Greeks were really into that and trying to understand what is the consciousness, the one who is looking, and where the consciousness is looking at. You know, that's also already two reference points. You know, like you have a dot here and you have a dot here. Like, oh, I'm a dot here and my other dot is there. So there's a reference point between what I'm looking at and who I am, and that relationship. You know, and you could call it love, is a connecting point. You know, it's like how we are actually connected. And the more we find the connections between my own individual dot, my own consciousness, and every other dot around me, that's when we start to connect and reconnect and harmonize to the collective. Because really we're on the path. We're on a path of, let's say, from the individual to the collective, from the individual Atman, realizing that we're Brahman, if I'm talking about Vedic knowledge. And geometry, in a sense, is a way to get there, because it helps us, put frameworks around it. And there's a very beautiful framework that I would just like to show you very quickly. And it's a very simple framework as well. See if you can see that. It's a dot and a circle, okay? And there's a little riddle in this is actually in the yogic tradition, because in the yogic tradition, everything is based on Purusha, pure consciousness, and Prakriti, which is matter. Now, my question to you is, if you're looking at this form, the dot and the circle, which one is consciousness, Purusha, and which one is matter? I give you one more phrase that goes with it. Purusha can see, but cannot move. Prakriti can move, but cannot see. Okay? So one is still, Purusha, the observer, the consciousness is still, and Prakriti, matter, the reality experience, is constantly moving. So if you're looking at this dot and circle, which one is Purusha, consciousness, and which one is Prakriti, matter?
The center is Purusha.
Purusha. And then Prakriti, yeah?
But I would love to elaborate a bit more that
Okay.
in my personal consciousness opinion, that the
Yes.
central one could only be Atman, because
Yes.
eventually Brahman is everything. So anything between the center and the perimeter and everything beyond and around and inside and outside and all of that is Brahman itself.
And there is actually a geometry that shows how this works, how actually the center can become the outside, and the outside is the center. And that's why, in a way, geometry is so powerful, because all of the things that you were saying today were all, in a way, correct. They're all correct. you know. So I'll just picking up on the things that resonate a lot with me, which is like the idea of a hologram, the idea of simulation, the idea that we're all a fractal of the whole, that we're an individual consciousness, but we're actually part of the collective. It's all a pattern, you know. It's consciousness like fundamental, like space and time. And really all is consciousness, but at the same time, there's different degrees of consciousness, because we said there's conscious, there's subconscious, there's unconscious, there's superconscious. Like you could say right now you have a focal point on a certain scale of consciousness. No, we are in a body, and that's a certain scale because you are consisting out of smaller parts of consciousness. So like your cells, each one cell is consciousness. Is it conscious? Well, we don't know, but it's definitely consciousness. And then each cell, again, is made out of many other parts, like atoms. And it's also consciousness, though it's matter, it's a point of focus. So really, in geometry, every single center in the universe, which is actually any dot in the universe, which is anything that exists, is consciousness on a journey of expressing itself and experiencing itself and realizing that it's becoming in that process becoming more expansive, more complex, more intelligent, you could say, because intelligence, again, also is a process of consciousness evolving, because let's say a dog has a different type of intelligence than we have, but it's still consciousness as well. And so really as human beings, and that I just make the loop back to an event I was giving in London this week, really the journey is about the human being being able to comprehend the mathematics of consciousness, being able to comprehend the way it is structured, how consciousness actually structures itself, how it can be individual and at the same time part of the absolute. And the journey of knowledge is one part. That's Krishna's teachings. So you see a lot in India. As a way to get closer to the divine, just as much as if people pray, for example, devote themselves, or if they're just moral per se. But it's one of the paths to actually achieve that. And this is stuff that I would like to offer you, because that's been my journey the last 12 years, and I wrote 2 books about it. And really, once we start to comprehend how the structure of consciousness works, then it starts to shift something subtly in us. And I was just at a talk last week in London about the future of the world, and that it's all really bad, climate change and all of these things. But actually, once the highest thing of thinking that we can achieve to solve any problem is whole systems thinking, which is a change of perception as well, how we change the way we see the world and ourselves. So really, once we start to get into the study of who we are and how we relate it to anything else, how we can then embody it and apply it, that's really how we change the world. And that's the journey into the collective consciousness.
So if the circle with the point is 2D, is that just in 3D toroidal? It's just, okay.
It's actually 4D. Toroidal would be 4D. It would be sphere in 3D.
Sphere in 3D. Okay, yeah. And toroidal in 4D. All right, thank you.
Yeah, it's just a matter of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
There's a famous quote which has been attributed to many different people. I think it appeared in an ancient Latin text, the first known appearance of this, but I think Blaise Pascal, Voltaire, lots of people said this thing, that God is an infinite sphere whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere, right? Yeah. And, if you look at the first principle of Sufism, they say, there is no God but God. I worship everything and everyone. Meaning that center, I guess, as you said, it can become Brahman. That's present in everything. Everything is at the center because there are no boundaries. There's no conditions. There's no. As soon as we start to try and perceive things, we're creating conditions. So even like if you have through plant medicine, you have an experience of like unity consciousness, you're still observing that from another point. It's quite a weird thing. So. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's that was kind of my take from what you were talking about there. I think that the infinite sphere, you know, yeah, it's like that kind of alludes to the what Jeremiah was saying about the three-dimension, you know, it's not like two-dimensional, it's multi-dimensional. It's everywhere.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting how you said that. Actually, every dot is at the center, because in an infinite space, any dot is the center.
Mm.
Because it's infinite. So any dot is the center.
Mhm.
Which brings us actually to this idea that you are the center of your reality, you know, your consciousness, and out of your center, the dot, you're creating this reality around you, or at least influencing it to a certain degree. Well, it depends on which part you're talking about. If you're talking about ultimate, yes, you're creating it. You're creating all, but from your individual, you're partly creating it. And yeah, knowing that gives you a lot of power, I guess, you know, a lot of empowerment to what you want to achieve, to who you are, to become more than, how we said last time, the producer, the director, the writer, and the actor of your life. And that's really what we want to step into, because that's the next level of consciousness that, yeah, it's like the next level, you know, where we're not just a product of our environments. No, we are the directors of our life, and we can change anything once we start to change the way we see ourselves and our own consciousness. So yeah, with that said, we're coming to an end of this beautiful dialogue. But yeah, it's basically about how all different views of this world, whether we're talking about, you know, in our first few sessions, we talked about what is truth, or does reality exist, and what is consciousness. I mean, ultimately, it's all the same. And we're getting to the ground of that in the workshops, because the geometric blueprint of reality is quite complex and vast, but at the same time, it's super simple as well. So there's a lot of words that we use to describe our experiences and describe things. And yet when you show a shape, like I was just showing you a dot and a circle, everything falls into like a simple container, you know? And it's something now you can hold, and then we can also apply it in our life, because it becomes more of a, yeah, very clear focal point, like you're using spatial awareness, basically. Time is up. I wish you all a beautiful, beautiful day. And maybe when you go through the day today, maybe you can just become aware of just that simple geometric concept of the dot inside of you and the reality around you. And just become aware of this thing like, okay, imagine that dot is actually still. It's always in the center. It doesn't move. Whatever you're going to do, actually, your relationship to reality will always be the same. There's a still center. Even if you're running, there's a still center. And then imagine the reality around you is actually changing. Not you moving in reality. The reality around you is changing, like a simulation, right? Where you're an avatar and playing a game and the screen is moving. It looks like you're moving, but actually you're not. And just take that as an exercise. See how it feels to become aware of this. And yeah, if you're joining next dialogue, I'd be happy to hear your experience, or just share it in the group. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a great Sunday.
It's you.
Thank you.